Today I had big plans to get Studman going under saddle, but the weather looks like it's not exactly going to cooperate with us. I just checked the weather and we're supposed to have little tiny thunderstorms all throughout the day. As soon as I turned these boys out this morning, it was pretty obvious that the change in pressure was giving them a little bit of excitement. I can definitely tell that Studman is enjoying his new shoe setup. I haven't seen him jump around and play this much in a pretty long time. His recent diet change has definitely benefited him as well. I can tell he has a lot more energy than he usually does. As usual, Gus is a pretty even keel guy even when he's running around and playing. I think Studman was wishing that he would play with him a little bit more this morning. The weather this time of year can be a little bit crazy and it's really hard to make plans, especially when I don't have an indoor arena. I'm just going to continue my morning chores and hopefully we'll get a little break in the weather sometime today so I can get some of the horses worked. If not, it looks like Studman is doing a good job of getting his exercise all on his own for the day. Ziggy doesn't seem to be too impressed with these boys. I think he still doesn't feel like he's quite part of the herd yet. It looks like Studman still has quite a bit of energy and I think he's going to try and wrangle up Ziggy to try and get him to play. With a few droplets just starting to fall, it is the perfect time for these boys to get a good roll in. Naturally, as soon as Studman saw Gus roll, he had to do so as well. It was pretty interesting to see Studman kind of calculating how he was going to get Ziggy to join in with them this morning. Studman is definitely in charge in this little herd, but all of these boys don't care too much about the pecking order. Studman makes a few circles around each of the boys and tries to instigate a little bit more play. Ziggy seemed to be a little bit hesitant at first, but finally he decided to join in with Studman. It's really nice to see Ziggy starting to meld into this little herd, even if he is still apprehensive at times. Studman and Gus aren't kicking at him, they're just simply playing right now. I think Ziggy is not quite sure about these boys quite yet. Even though this pasture is kind of on the small side, it is plenty of room for these boys to stretch their legs and run around. For those of you guys asking me about lead changes, Studman did a pretty nice one there. You can see his legs that are closest to us are reaching out a little bit forward, and then on this next stride he just switches mid-air, so the ones that are farthest away are a little bit far forward. That is the simplest way I can break it down for you, but I just noticed that while I was looking at the footage and I thought I'd share it. After a few laps around the field, it looks like these three boys are still full of energy. It is sprinkling a little bit on and off, and I think there's still a bit more weather to blow in. I was excited to see Gus moving around so well. He was pretty sore right when I moved these boys over into this smaller pasture. Ziggy is about at 6 or 7 weeks for his shoes, and I noticed while he was running around that he did catch the front shoe with one of his hind feet and it kind of slung off. Thankfully, I did notice it and was able to kind of take note of the general area it was in, so I'm going to have to go pick that up later. It is kind of interesting to see Ziggy galloping around versus these other two boys. Gus and Studman are both quarter horses, and Ziggy is definitely an Arabian. As Studman and Gus were starting to run out of energy, it looked like Ziggy was just getting started. Ziggy is a very handsome horse, but I didn't really realize it until I saw all of these three boys moving together.
Oh, Ziggy!
While Studman and Gus have the refinement that you would expect from a couple of roly-poly cow ponies, Ziggy is definitely more refined and elegant. I can definitely tell that Ziggy has a bit more endurance than these other boys just from this little bit of running around that they were doing. It looks like Ziggy could go on for quite a bit longer, and these two other boys are getting a little bit run down. I wasn't really surprised to see Gus run out of steam first. He is a pretty chill horse and doesn't really run around too much. Studman is definitely starting to get a little bit tired as well, but Ziggy looks like he's just out for an easy afternoon jog. Gus definitely wanted to participate this morning, but I can tell he is pretty much over it at this point and probably ready for some snacks. The sky looks like it is pretty dark over here. I haven't heard any thunder yet. I am going to continue with my morning chores, cleaning out this dry lot, and hopefully it'll blow past pretty quickly. These kinds of storms are a pretty common occurrence this time of year just because of how close I am to the mountains. The weather can change very rapidly, so it is hard to make plans for the day when it looks like this outside in the morning.
Hey, boys.
Studman definitely looks like he got a good little workout this morning.
Hey.
And you can see that Ziggy is missing one of his shoes.
Come on. Zig.
Before the weather gets too bad, I am going to go ahead and search for Ziggy's shoe.
Oh, no, Zig. Zig. Whoa.
These boys still have a little bit of extra energy this morning, so I'm just going to wander around and try and figure out where Ziggy's shoe went to. I like to reset these glue-on shoes a couple of times, so I'm going to try my hardest to find it because this is the first time Ziggy's wearing these shoes. I do have another set his
Hey,
size that I could put on, but I would like to get the most use out of these shoes.
where's your shoe, buddy? Why, Zig?
Ziggy is definitely
Boys.
looking a whole lot stronger than when I
Why,
first
Zig?
bought him. After passing his last vet visit with flying colors, I now am a little bit more comfortable with starting to look for a home for him. In the past, when I get a horse like Ziggy in, I like to make sure that when I eventually send them on to their new home, they cover the cost of their entire rehab. A horse like Ziggy, I will probably end up selling for between $4,000 and $5,000. Even with him being a little bit on the older side, that is a completely reasonable price to ask for him. I do like to take my time finding the perfect situation for these horses, so I'm not going to be in any kind of rush with Ziggy. This time of year is not a particularly good time to sell a horse and get it into a good home for the winter. Since I don't rely on selling horses for an actual income, I can really keep Ziggy as long as I want.
Why, Zig?
Because you guys have been watching all of his videos, he pretty much has paid for his own rehab without me having to sell him, so that is pretty cool.
Gus.
Now that he is getting along with Studman and Gus, I feel a lot more comfortable
buddy.
keeping him through the winter, knowing that he has a little herd that he gets along with pretty well. I do also have to have that really long tooth he had checked one more time by the vet. I haven't noticed any deficits in how he's eating, so I think he can be fed like a completely normal horse. I do feel like the tricky part with finding him a new home will be getting him in the right environment. He is a little bit on the high strung side just because he's an Arabian and he does need a lot of exercise to keep a cool head. He's not crazy, that's kind of just the breed standard. He gets really bored just standing around. I am probably going to trim him over the next couple of days and see if I actually need to put these shoes back on him. I did get invited on a pretty long trail riding trip in the Tetons, but I just think Ziggy is not quite fit enough for it yet. They will be doing 15 miles every single day for a couple of days in a row, and I just don't think Ziggy is up for it quite yet.
Good boys.
There is another super fun activity that's kind of close to where I am that I do think I will get the chance to take Ziggy on in a couple of weeks. I've got some time to build his stamina up and his endurance. But if the weather continues to be like this, I am going to have to really work hard to get him squeezed in with the other horses. When the days look like this, it's hard to get out on the trails because they can become dangerous pretty quickly. It sounds like the bulk of the storm is starting to blow in. I still haven't heard any thunder yet, so I'm just going to keep on going. We could definitely use the rain. It is pretty crispy out here. Thankfully, wildfire season, I won't say it's over, but it was a little bit on the shorter side this summer. Hopefully the air will stay clear and I'll be able to get out and about without worrying about setting things on fire. It's starting to rain a little bit more now, but I'm really wanting to get all of this manure laid out and hopefully drug before the majority of the rain hits. It's looking quite ominous,
Hey,
but
Whip.
these boys don't seem too excited about it.
Hey, buddy.
I've noticed since Whiplash has been in with these boys, he's become a lot more friendly. He has always been a pretty outgoing kind of horse, but it seems like he comes up and wants scratches every single time I go over to those boys. He may be getting a little bit jealous because I haven't really been working him at all this summer. I was able to get this dry lot relatively clean before the storm really started blowing in. I want these boys to have access to their run-in shed, so I'm just going to open the gate to their dry lot so they can come inside if they want. I have been really surprised about how clean they're keeping their run-in shed. Usually one of the horses decides that it's just for them and they poop in it and it's a complete mess. But these boys have been really tidy. I did put out new round bales for the other horses, but I'm waiting on these boys to kind of eat the leftovers before I put a new one out. Most of this hay is still perfectly good. I noticed that one of them started peeing in here, so unfortunately they did ruin a bit of the leftover hay.
Boys.
I will probably go ahead and clean up all of the remaining hay tomorrow morning and get them set up with a brand new round bale. The hay nets really do prevent a lot of wastage, but there's still a little bit that gets ruined because the horses pull it out through the net and then just kind of lay it on the ground. Studman is still looking pretty roly-poly on this hay. His energy does seem to be up, so he's not weighed down by all the high sugar and starch that was in the other hay. Hopefully he'll just continue to get more fit as I continue to work on his undersaddle training. Since it is about to rain pretty good, I am gonna go ahead and harrow all of these fresh piles that I put out in the little baby pastures. This is nothing fancy, it's just a piece of cattle panel that I cut up into 2 sections. The harrow digs down too deep in the grass and I always find a bunch more weeds after I use the harrow, so I've been using this for the last 2 years and it seems to work pretty well. This is basically a homemade drag mat. You can buy them, but they're like $200 and this cattle panel was maybe $30 tops. Just another simple way to save some money that I can spend on the horses. Really, this manure should be composted a little bit first, but my pile is getting a little bit large, so for now this stuff is going to have to go out on the tiny pasture for these boys. It's almost cold enough that we are having snow up in the mountains, which isn't out of the ordinary. I'm surprised it's not raining harder yet for as ominous as the clouds look. I have a few chores in the barn that I can do while this storm is blowing through. I already fed Frisco, Bill, and Nigel their first meal for the day.
Nigel.
I think I got Nigel's a little bit too soupy because there was some liquid still left in his feed pan when he was done.
Nigel.
As much as I try and convince Nigel he needs to be inside for these little storms, he would much rather be outside in the elements. Somebody asked me in the comments how I clean up these shoes and reuse them, and it's pretty easy with this urethane glue. Typically, I will clean up all of the excess glue and it'll actually just peel right off pretty easily. This one was being a little bit stubborn because I didn't prep the foot before the shoe came off. Since Ziggy can't really be walking around all day with only one shoe, I'm going to go out and pull the other one off. Somehow, with all of this crazy summer weather we've been having, I've still managed to get a pretty impressive t-shirt tan. Ziggy saw me coming with the halter and he wasn't really enthusiastic about getting caught, so I just dropped it and he is fine to stand still while I remove this shoe. You basically just have to break the seal on the glue and then the shoe pops off pretty easily. I did check my phone and it's actually been a little bit longer than 7 weeks since I put these shoes on Ziggy. His hoof growth has slowed down since he's been off his mineral supplement. He doesn't really need it now, just the regular feeding program is perfect for him. But for those of you wondering how long these shoes can actually stay on, I bet Ziggy could have gone a full 8 weeks if he hadn't stepped on the back of that one playing around. Every time I go to bring Nigel in, it looks like the sky opens up and it becomes a perfectly sunshiny day out.
Buddy.
Nigel has his
Nigel?
little cabana shades and he's got a windbreak.
Want to stay out, little buddy? Nigel.
Even though the first storm has passed, there is this tiny little one that will blow through in probably 20 minutes or so. I'm guessing it's only going to rain for like 5 minutes, so in the end, Nigel will be perfectly fine standing outside. I would like to put him in Prim's stall with a run so he can go in as he pleases. But with him losing his sight, it's better if he can stay out in the pen that he really knows all of the boundaries to. Due to how cold it gets here in the winter, he does spend a lot of his time inside. But for these tiny storms, it's really not worth it to put him in a stall. I was trying to time it perfect to where I was out eating lunch while the storm rolled through, and I noticed that these boys had escaped back into their pasture. Even though they've already gotten their breakfast, I'm gonna have to coax them in with some more ration balancer. I do like to alternate the pasture time because I don't like when horses are sharing a fence line. They can get their legs caught in it, and it is pretty much the only time I've ever had trouble with the horses getting hurt with the fencing. So before I leave for lunch, I am gonna have to coax these boys back inside their dry lot.
Come on, boys. Come on, boys. Come on.
Eventually, little Gus, Stewie, and Pete came running in for some extra breakfast. Horses are pretty simple-minded creatures, and these boys will come right back into the dry lot for just a little taste of grain.
Goosey.
I still have to entice Whiplash and Goose back into this pen. Over the last couple of days, I've noticed that Goose has becoming a little bit more withdrawn from the other horses. It looks like it's gonna be a little bit tricky getting him back in here.
Come on. Hey, buddy. Come on, Goose.
I have found it interesting how Whiplash has kind of integrated himself into his new herd. He has always had a little bit of trouble with that. I know a lot of you guys are feeling bad for Goose right now, but he typically is a huge bully in a herd. That is one of the reasons that he was put with Whiplash, because Whiplash is about the only horse that can keep him in line. With Stewie getting a little bit older, a little bit bigger, and a lot more brave, it seems like he has definitely pushed Goose out of this little herd. I feel like I've given it sufficient time to see if he'll kind of work his way back into the herd, but now I'm kind of thinking I might need to switch it up a little bit.
Come on, Goose. Come on, Goosey. Come on.
Goose seems really reluctant to come in today, and I know even with that divider fence in the dry lot, he keeps getting pushed around quite a bit. He didn't really want to take any snacks from my hands, but he's happy to follow me in back to the dry lot. It is crazy how fast the weather can change here. We've been going back and forth between rainstorms and bright sun all day.
Come on.
It is really interesting to me how Pete and also now Goose are appearing to be a lot more outgoing and interested in what I particularly am doing these days. Both Goose and Pete have been shut down for a number of years. Compared to Ziggy, who came around rather quickly, these boys have taken a lot of extra time to feel comfortable in a herd and to seek out attention from me. Given what Goose is experiencing in his little herd, it might be the perfect opportunity for me to wiggle my way in and become best friends with him. It looks like even Whiplash is starting to push him around more than usual. The little break in the storm also brought out some sandhill cranes, which I think are probably my most favorite bird. Every year around this time, I do get the opportunity to see quite a few of these. They usually land in this field and hang out for a couple of days before they continue their journey.
Stewie?
Stewie wastes no time letting Goose know that he is still no longer welcome in his tiny little herd, but eventually he ends up getting an extra snack. This is pretty out of character for Goose. He usually does not just wander up to me for scratches. 10 minutes later, we finally get hit with the deluge from the little storm passing through. Hopefully later on today will be a lot nicer out and I can get some work done with the horses, but unfortunately it looks like we're gonna have this kind of weather all day long. Despite my best efforts, Nigel also insisted on staying outside to enjoy his second mash of the day. Perfectly normal summertime weather in Montana, and in 5 minutes it'll probably be sun shining out again. Thank you guys so much for watching and stay tuned for the next video.